Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Director Culver, my question is for you. With the moratorium on leasing on federal lands, please tell me what the status of that is.
Right now, we have a pause on leasing while we conduct a comprehensive review of the oil and gas program, looking at the fiscal aspects as well as the climate impacts.
How long do you anticipate that taking?
Right now, we are conducting the review.
How long do you anticipate that taking?
Right now, we are conducting the review. I don't have a specific time to give you.
So last year, just in the state of North Dakota for 2020, Interior dispersed over $66 million in revenues. So what's the revenue impact on this moratorium going to be on the states and the federal government as well for revenues it receives from energy development on federal lands?
Since the majority of revenue that we receive and that goes to the states comes from producing leases on royalties, we anticipate that looking at the amount of lands under lease, the amount of permits, the thousands of permits that have been issued, and the thousands of permits that are under consideration, as well as the leased lands available, we do not anticipate a significant impact on income in the near future.
Well, but you just said thousands of leases under consideration. So if those aren't able to proceed, wouldn't that create a significant revenue impact both for the states and for the federal government? And the states share that revenue with the counties as well.
Indeed, they do. And what I said was there are approximately 7,900 permits that are issued and available for use right now to drill and produce, and another 5,600 permits that we are considering to issue.
So if imports, do you expect imports of oil to go up or down if we stop developing oil and gas on federal lands?
That's not an assessment I've made, but I'd be happy to look into it for you.
I'm sorry, could you say it?
That's not an assessment that I have made right now. We will be continuing to evaluate the impacts of the program as the comprehensive review continues.
So if we are not able to develop oil and gas resources in this country, will that shift production to countries like Russia and to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela that have lower environmental standards than we do?
Right now, we don't see a slowdown on development in our country based on the 13.9 million acres of leases that have not yet been developed, as well as the 12.7 million acres that are currently being developed.
So you don't think having a moratorium on leasing on federal lands will slow down development? That's your position?
What I'm saying is, what I can tell you is the math and the facts that we have thousands of permits available for drilling and millions of acres of land that can be developed right now.
Do you realize that if you were a mineral owner in North Dakota and you own the surface acres, but that if you share some of that mineral ownership with with Interior, and Interior has no surface acreage, that your moratorium would prevent that private landowner from developing his mineral interests?
I know that our pause does not affect non-federal acres or minerals, so private acres, tribal acres are not affected.
Not tribal acres, but I'm talking about privately owned mineral interests, even where you have no surface acreage, but you have an interest as well, a partial interest in those minerals. You're preventing someone from developing their minerals. Do you realize that?
Thank you, Senator. My understanding is our pause only affects the federal minerals.
Okay, well then we should talk some more about that, because remember, mineral interest, you share mineral interest in some of these tracts based on spacing unit with other owners. You're aware of that?
Yes, I am, and I'd be happy to talk about it with you further.
Okay. To the Governor Gordon, what would you say is the impact of this moratorium in terms of lost revenues and so forth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, Senator Hoeven. It is dramatic. In my testimony, I mentioned a couple of those numbers, 5.7 million of that from lease sales alone, lease bonuses, et cetera. And that's significant in our state. I do want to mention that I want to compliment North Dakota and Doug Burgum, your governor, for their leadership on carbon capture and sequestration. But returning to the topic, one of the biggest issues that I see, and I see this because I serve on our Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, is as a field develops, issues like flaring become more important. We need to make sure that infrastructure can be built out to new development. If that new development is uncertain, the build out probably doesn't happen. It doesn't allow us to capture the flares, and that is something that Wyoming has been particularly, and I know North Dakota as well, have been particularly aggressive in making sure that we don't see excessive flaring.
Right, and that'll be my final question is, Governor, both in our state and your state, it's not just about producing more energy. Aren't we also putting the latest technologies out there to also garner better environmental stewardship? And that includes development on the federal lands, does it not?
Absolutely, Mr. Senator. The technology has improved dramatically over the last decade or two. We can now drill horizontally, much better technology. It is much more expensive, and the capital at risk is much more of an issue. So having some dependability about how you're going to be able to develop those leases is absolutely essential. What that does to the uncertainty that is put into our program, because we don't know when these leases will be able to be purchased again, really causes a lot of concern for our development.
Right, and that includes things like carbon capture, which both our states, as you said, correctly so, are working very hard to do and really lead the way forward on it. So thank you for your leadership, Mr. Governor, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.